This is an overview presentation to share more information about the partner nonprofit corporations, Caribbean Women's Society, Caribbean Canadian Parents United, and Caribbean Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Community. Their respective social media names are Our CWS, Our CCPU, and the First C5. The most senior of the three partner organizations is the Caribbean Women's Society, which was formed in 2015. 2 years later, the Caribbean Women's Society established the two other organizations, Caribbean Canadian Parents United and Caribbean Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Community in 2017. These three partner organizations share the same vision statement, which is a thriving Caribbean Canadian community. Two major changes happened for these organizations in 2020. Up until February 2020, these three organizations were operating individually. So they have their own memberships, they have their own board of directors, and they were working individually, separate from each other, unless there were specific events taking place, but for the most part, separate activities. As of March 2020, there was a restructuring that happened, and now all three of these organizations are partner organizations. So they more or less, the majority of their activities are shared and common activities. That was the first major change. The second major change is we have now moved from Ontario-focused membership to a virtually based membership, which means now we are able to open up our eligibility to Caribbean Canadians currently residing anywhere in Canada, any province, any territory. People of Caribbean descent are eligible to join these three organizations, any or all three organizations, because they are now 100% virtually based nonprofit corporations. So those are the two major changes. One, they're now working as a partnership, these three organizations, and they're now virtually based, meaning Caribbean Canadians across Canada are eligible to join. The Caribbean Canadian identity is defined as people who are, one, native to or descending from the Caribbean regions, territories, nations, including their various distinctions by race, ancestry, and ethnicity, among other things. And number two, they have to currently reside within Canada. And number three, they have to voluntarily self-identify as Caribbean and or Caribbean Canadian. These three partner organizations represent and serve exclusively the Caribbean Canadian identity. And we ask and expect our members, directors, and supporters to kindly support this sole shared identity in our spaces. We also do not tolerate hate, political, religious, and or racially based debates and discussions in our spaces. Each of the three organizations have their own distinct mandates that are specific to the group. The Caribbean Women's Society's mandate is to connect and enable Caribbean Canadian women. The Caribbean Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Community is mandated to advance the economic and social well-being of the Caribbean Canadian community at large. And the Caribbean Canadian Parents United organization is mandated to connect and enable Caribbean Canadian parents and families. So while they have their own distinct purpose or mandate, each of these organizations still share the same common vision of a thriving Caribbean Canadian community. Within each organization, there are custom activities. These activities are 100% member-driven and member-led. So the members are expected to routinely make suggestions as far as what activities, services, and programs they would like to see in the organization that they belong to. And we do have a form where members can submit their ideas on an ongoing basis. The proposal is then reviewed by the specific board of directors. They're checking to see that it's in line with the objectives and goals of the organization, that it's in line with the vision, the ultimate vision for the organization, and that we have the resources to plan, coordinate, and execute on the idea. When the proposal is reviewed, a decision is made to go forward with it, the directors now go back to the member who suggested it to make sure that they are willing to volunteer their time to help out on a planning committee for this suggested idea. And that has to happen in order for an idea to be explored or an idea to be taken on as a potential activity within the organization. The member not only suggests the idea, but they also have to be willing to volunteer their time to work on the idea. And then when those two things are in place, then there's a recruiting of additional members to volunteer on a planning committee to assist. So we form teams of members to plan, coordinate, execute the ideas that come from the members. So while these organizations have their own distinct mandates or purposes, and they also have custom activities based on their mandates, they do have between each organization common objectives and common goals. One is they embrace and adapt to change. They foster creativity, leadership, collaboration, volunteerism. These organizations include, serve, and support its members. They're focused on building and strengthening a sense of belonging, friendship, and a feeling of community within each organization. They include, serve, and advocate for the Caribbean Canadian community and the Caribbean culture in all its diversity. And of course, these partner organizations are pursuing the common vision, which is a thriving Caribbean Canadian community. Here are some examples of their common activities that have been recently launched in April 2020 as a response to COVID-19. We were looking for ways to continuously support and connect our members during this very scary and uncertain time in history. So number one is we're now hosting regular online virtual members only video conferences. We also started a virtual book club and a virtual group yoga program. And we've also started our first members only podcast and vlog series. All of these activities were suggested by members of the various organizations. And not only did they suggest these ideas, but they were also willing to volunteer their time to plan, coordinate, and execute these ideas until they become permanent or active activities and programs. These organizations do not have any paid employees or paid staff. It is 100% run by the members of the organizations. Another recent program that we started at the 3 organizations is the Emergency Financial Assistance Program. We've started a GoFundMe account / emergency funds for Caribbean Canadians. And this fund is 100% given out to Caribbean Canadian families in an emergency situation or a crisis. So for example, COVID-19, domestic abuse, flood or unexpected flood or fire. And the funds are given out to these families to help with basic needs like food and housing. It's a one-time payment to families, and it's given out, it's reviewed and given out on a online application process. So we're calling on supporters, community members, directors, family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, anybody who is willing to assist a family in need is welcome and encouraged to make a donation via GoFundMe. And there is no minimum donation amount. Every penny goes to Caribbean Canadian families in need via an online application process. One of our most notable accomplishments is the first ever initiative that we started in Canada, the first ever Caribbean Heritage Month. So in October 2018, we declared the month of October as Caribbean Heritage Month, and we started campaigning and hosting Caribbean-focused activities in the month of October, primarily in Ontario. The goal is to have this declared in every province and in every territory, and then ultimately have it recognized by the Prime Minister nationally, on the national federal level. So there's a lot of steps to be taken, and we're expecting that our members and supporters get involved and assist with taking those steps until it is legislated in every province and federally in Canada. We were successful last year, October 2019, when we had the October Heritage Month, Caribbean Heritage Month, introduced into the Ontario Parliament last year, October 28th, 2019. And you can look up the bill on the Ontario Parliament website. You would just type Bill 134 in the search bar, and you'll see the actual write-up for the bill. So it was successfully introduced in the Ontario Parliament in October 2019. But that was just the first of 3 steps to have it actually officially proclaimed in Ontario. We've only accomplished the first of 3 steps in Ontario. So we're again expecting our members and supporters to help us continuously and consistently and persistently until it is actually finalized in Ontario. And then from there, we're moving from province to province. And again, ultimately to have it where our Prime Minister can acknowledge and recognize on a federal level. We also created our own website for Caribbean Heritage Month, and that is OURCHM.ca. And we have volunteers that do their best, make their best effort to update the website on a regular basis, or at least once every year, around Caribbean Heritage Month, which is October, and continuously building on it. So this is our platform where we can share everything about the Caribbean contributions and the Caribbean history in Canada. And we're looking for members, the Caribbean Canadian community at large, to help us to build on that website and make sure that we're telling the full story about the Caribbean history, the Caribbean contributions to Canada. So at each of these 3 partner organizations, there are 3 key activities, ongoing activities that are super critical to the functioning of these organizations. Number 1 is board leadership and partnership. That is critical to the effectiveness of the organizations. And then the other 2 functions are member contributions and member participation. So one way to contribute is signing up to volunteer on a task force, on a planning committee, on a delivery team. That is one way that you are effectively contributing to the success of the organization, is by volunteering on a team. And another example of how to contribute is by making suggestions on an ongoing basis. We welcome the suggestions and the ideas from the members. The more they suggest, the more ideas that we can incorporate in the organization's activities and programs and services, the better it will serve the membership. And the more accurate it will reflect the needs of Caribbean Canadians. The third key function at our organizations is member participation. So things like attending our video conferences, going out of your way to show up and let us see the face behind the name so that we can actually feel a personal connection to the members. Participating in the WhatsApp chats is another way to be present, to make yourself available, to ask for help, to show your willingness to contribute or to participate in the organization. Outreach is another important way that members can participate. So following our social media accounts, our CWS, our CCPU, and the first C5. Following us, sharing our posts, liking our posts, those are ways to help us reach out to more Caribbean Canadians. The more Caribbean Canadians that are aware of these nonprofits that are here to serve and represent them, the better we are as a community. The more ideas, the more suggestions, the more needs we'll be able to address when we have maximum amount of Caribbean Canadians aware of these organizations. So it's a simple sharing and liking of our posts that will help us get there. So those are the 3 main functions that are critical to the ongoing operation, effective operation of our partner organizations. So this concludes the overview presentation of the partner organizations, Caribbean Women's Society, Caribbean Canadian Parents United, and Caribbean Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Community.